From Neural Newscast, this is Nerfed, where games, culture, and strategy intersect.
I'm Vanessa Calderon.
And I'm Marcus. Today, we're tracking a publisher that seems to be hitting the game over screen before the actual game even ships.
Seriously, Marcus? According to reports from Game Informer, Nacon, the publisher behind GreedFall 2, The Dying World, has officially filed for insolvency. And the timing? It's peak sarcasm. We are talking just weeks before the sequel's big launch. This isn't just a minor speed bump for a mid-tier studio. It is a full-blown existential crisis for a project that fans have been waiting on for years. The original GreedFall was a surprise hit back in 2019, selling millions of copies and proving that spiders could punch way above their weight class by delivering that classic BioWare-style RPG experience that people felt was missing from the market. But now, with the sequel right on the horizon, the news of this financial collapse is sending shockwaves through the French development community. We are hearing that the insolvency filing was registered in the French commercial courts just a few days ago, specifically targeting the publishing wing that oversees these major software releases. It is the kind of situation that leaves every developer at Spiders looking at their screens, wondering if the work they have put in over the last 4 years is about to be buried in legal paperwork and creditor meetings. When we talk about a publisher being the backbone of a game's release, it is about more than just a logo on the box. It is about the entire support structure. If that structure is literally falling apart while the game is being shipped to digital storefronts, we are entering uncharted territory for a release of this scale. This wasn't supposed to be how the story of GreedFall 2 started.
It's a nightmare scenario for any dev team. Insolvency isn't just a fancy word for we're broke. It means the publisher is legally admitting they can't meet their financial obligations. When that happens during a launch window, the marketing budget usually vanishes first. For a game like GreedFall 2, which needs that launch velocity to succeed, this is a massive red flag. Launch velocity is everything in the current 2026 landscape. If you don't have that initial burst of visibility on Steam or the storefronts on the first weekend, you are effectively buried by the algorithm within a week. Without Nacon's financial backing to push for those prime advertising slots or to manage the complex logistics of a global digital rollout, Spiders is basically trying to win a race while their car is being repossessed in the middle of the track. We are also looking at the impact on distribution. Even in a digital-heavy era, there are contracts and fees associated with every platform, and if Nacon can't fulfill their side of the ledger, those platforms might get very nervous about hosting the title. This isn't just about the money in the bank, it's about the trust in the brand. When a publisher enters insolvency proceedings, a court-appointed administrator usually takes the wheel, and their primary job isn't to make sure the game is a masterpiece, it's to make sure the creditors get paid back as much as possible. That shift in priorities can be lethal for a game that needs final polish and post-launch support to find its footing. It is a heartbreaking position for the developers who are likely seeing their hard work used as collateral in a legal battle they have no control over.
I mean, naming the game The Dying World was maybe a little too on the nose for Nacon's bank account, right? You have the team at Spiders working their hearts out, and then the parent company pulls the rug. It feels like every time we turn around lately, a mid-tier publisher is folding under the pressure of trying to act like a giant. We have seen this squeeze happening across the entire industry over the last 18 months. The middle ground is disappearing. You either have the massive trillion-dollar corporations like Microsoft and Sony, or you have the lean indie outfits that can survive on a shoestring budget. The publishers like Nacon, who are trying to manage dozens of AA projects with budgets in the $20 to $30 million range, are finding themselves caught in a vice. The cost of development has skyrocketed, even for these mid-range titles, and the audience's expectations for visual fidelity and scope have never been higher. Spiders has always been the king of that Eurojank charm, games that have high ambitions and deep systems, even if they lack the ultra-smooth polish of a Naughty Dog title. But to sell that to a modern audience in 2026, you need a publisher that can shout loud enough to be heard over the noise. Nacon was supposed to be that voice. They spent years acquiring studios and building up a portfolio that included everything from racing sims to tactical RPGs, but it looks like they overextended themselves. They were trying to build an empire on a foundation of shifting sand, and now the tide is coming in. It is just tragic that GreedFall 2 has to be the one standing on the shoreline when the collapse happens.
Exactly, Vanessa. We've seen this pattern before. Nacon has been aggressive with acquisitions and trying to build a massive portfolio. But if you don't have the liquidity to support your biggest launches, the whole house of cards comes down. The big question now is what happens to the post-launch support and the patches? If Nacon is in insolvency proceedings, who's signing the checks for the server costs or the DLC? The technical reality of modern gaming is that a game is never really finished on launch day. It requires a continuous asset pipeline of fixes and optimizations, especially for a complex RPG like this one. If the engineers at Spiders can't get the green light for overtime, or if the cloud hosting fees for their backend services aren't being paid, the game could launch and then immediately break under its own weight. We have to consider the hardware side of their business too. People forget that Nacon is a huge player in peripherals. They have their own line of controllers and headsets that usually bring in steady revenue. If the software side of the business is so deep in the red that it's pulling the peripheral side into insolvency, then we are looking at a total systemic failure of the company. It suggests that their aggressive expansion into high-budget software was funded by debt that they simply could not service once interest rates and development timelines started to creep up. It is a cautionary tale for the entire industry. You can't just buy your way into being a major publisher. You have to have the operational stability to weather the storms. Spiders deserved a partner that could actually see them through to the finish line, not one that was going to run out of breath in the final 100 meters.
It puts the fans in a weird spot, too. Do you buy a game on day one if you aren't even sure the publisher will exist in 60 days? It's like a total vibe kill for a franchise that actually has a pretty dedicated following. I have seen the forums and the Discord servers for GreedFall, and the community is genuinely distraught. They want to support Spiders, and they want to see this story continue, but there is a very real fear that any money spent on the game right now is just going into a black hole of debt repayment rather than supporting the creators. There is also the fear of abandonware. If the publisher goes under, who manages the rights to the IP? Does the game get pulled from Steam if there's a legal dispute over ownership during the liquidation process? These are the kind of questions that shouldn't be on a gamer's mind when they're looking at a new trailer. It ruins the escapism. The first GreedFall was so special because it felt like a labor of love, a unique take on the colonial-era fantasy trope with a lot of heart. This sequel was supposed to expand on the lore of the Tier 4D and give us a deeper look at the old continent. It is such a subjective assessment, but I feel like the momentum for this release has just been completely neutralized. Even if the game is incredible, it's going to be released under this dark cloud of corporate failure. It makes it very hard to get excited about the dying world when the boardroom's already dead.
Wait, what? I was just looking at the latest filing details, and it's even messier than we thought. It really is. The Spiders team has built a unique world, and seeing it overshadowed by balance sheets and legal filings is just frustrating. We've reached a point where the business of games is becoming more prominent than the games themselves, and that's never a good sign for the health of the medium. We'll be watching the courts and the storefronts closely this week to see if GreedFall 2 actually makes it out the door in one piece. There is a slim chance that a white knight investor could swoop in and buy the publishing rights specifically for the GreedFall IP, which would be the best-case scenario for everyone. That would provide the cash injection needed to finish the marketing push and secure the post-launch window. But those kinds of deals take time, and time is the one thing Nacon doesn't have right now. The clock is ticking toward that launch date, and every day of silence from the publisher is another day of lost sales and increasing anxiety for the developers. We're talking about hundreds of talented people at Spiders whose livelihoods are tied to the success of this launch. They've been through the ringer already with the challenges of modern development, and to have this be the final hurdle is just cruel. We're hoping for a miracle for the Spiders team because they have consistently proven that they have the creative vision to be a major player in the RPG space.
Hopefully, the dying world finds a way to live on, but it's looking bleak in the boardroom. We will keep you updated as the situation evolves, especially as we get closer to that scheduled launch window. It is going to be a very long weekend for a lot of people in the industry as they wait to see what the administrators decide to do with Nacon's remaining assets. For now, all we can do is hope that the art can somehow survive the wreckage of the business. It is a reminder that in this industry, the biggest bosses aren't always the ones you fight with the controller in your hand. Sometimes they are the ones sitting in high-rise offices with a stack of legal documents. It's a brutal reality of the business in 2026.
It's a tough break for everyone involved. I'm Marcus Shaw.
And I'm Vanessa Calderon. Neural Newscast is AI-assisted, human-reviewed. View our AI transparency policy at neuralnewscast.com. For more gaming deep dives, check out Nerfed.ai. Thanks for listening to Nerfed.
This has been Nerfed on Neural Newscast, where games, culture, and strategy intersect.